Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about open office spaces. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, if stressed, unfocused, and sick programmers and are less productive, why are open offices so popular in IT? Well, it's a trend for sure, and I'll just give you from my very narrow perspective on the topic, why the most common thing that people consider when they use open offices. Uh, Most people who do it are just following that trend, and in many cases they don't really know why. But the people who usually do know why or claim that they know why give me two reasons. Number one, it is supposed to encourage more collaboration or a stronger sense of community, because if you can if you're in your own room, it might damage communication. It might There's all these subtle things that we claim happen that damages collaboration and closeness and the sense of community, as I said, if you're boxing people off from each other. That is the idea at the very least. And to a point, I would agree that there is a bigger sense of community if people are working in the same spaces and so forth. There's a higher sensation of familiarity when you can see people and you can actually. This is a very subjective thing, of course, but for a lot of people, it brings a stronger sense of community if you are in an open space and you can see everybody and you don't necessarily talk to them, but more organic conversations might be had, and more organic observations and visual familiarity with each other is going to happen if you're in that sort of space. So I think that there is a grain of truth to that. The second thing is that it looks better when you are, which this is a very popular thing to do when you're doing business. Ask your salespeople how important their office space is to them. Usually, it's fairly important because there is a lot of uh, subjective stuff that goes on in business, and in a lot of your company's profile and the initial reaction that new customers will have and so forth are tied there. It's tied into everything from how the people that they talk to, like the first impression that the sales rep is going to give, and of course the office is a factor in all of this as well. I've actually worked with people who were in sales, were very embarrassed by the state of their offices because they felt that the prestige of the brand, like the company's prestige, was really high, but the office space was so bad that it kind of damaged the credibility of like their process when they were getting new customers who kind of expected the office space to be nicer than it was. So open spaces is a way for you to mitigate that sort of thing. Where, as you can imagine, if you have a lot of natural sunlight and really large open areas and so forth, the scenery becomes much nicer than if you have like these boxes or like modules or screens everywhere. And once again, that is also, of course, a very subjective thing. The thing that is usually missed in this, which is I think is interesting, at least in the engineering department, there are studies, of course, that prove that all of this is these things that we talk about as benefits are there. But there's also studies saying that productivity, as the subscriber is mentioning, is actually going to go down from an open office space, because as a software developer, depending on how you work, of course, if you are more collaborative, this might be the perfect thing. But for those times when you're in the flow of things, because usually the way it works with software developers, and probably a lot of other people, is that since it's a creative profession, you can't just start immediately when you sit down at your computer. So any disruption you have to your workflow might actually damage your ability to produce, because what usually happens for a lot of developers is that they go into their zone, and when they're in their zone, that's when they're productive and they're thinking about problems, they're producing code and value and all of that stuff. If you break that or distract it, and that can happen in many ways, that's going to damage the overall productivity. You can't just immediately start back up. And but at the same time, I want to say this can happen for so many reasons. It can be everything to that your butt hurts because you have the wrong chair, or you need to go to the bathroom, or you realize that you haven't eaten something, and in an open office space, of course, I mean, somebody has an extra colorful sweater, like, or someone walks in the room or walks past you. There's so many things that could be distracting, of course. And sure, we can make an argument that if you can reduce down that as much as possible, yes, then there is less chance that that's going to happen. But as I said, you have to weigh that against the benefits, because it's not just like there are of course consequences to putting people in their own office spaces and like just shielding people off or isolating them from each other. So it's not like this whole open office thing is just a bad thing. I don't think we can categorize either approach as just good or bad. There are pros and cons depending on what you're trying to achieve. So what I want you to take away from this is that the main reasons are usually, when it comes to open office spaces in IT, the trend is due to that it's supposed to help with collaboration and a sense of community in the company. And I think that, well, from my personal experience, that does actually happen. It's a positive effect overall. And the other positive thing is that it makes the office space potentially nicer, because open spaces is usually something that goes over really well when you're taking in a scenery, or you're walking important clients through the office, or if you're just going to the office yourself. The downside is, of course, yes, productivity and things like that, and other factors can become a thing. The trend that I see these days, which is probably the norm, is that a lot of people are investing in noise cancelling headphones and so forth, and other methods for creating a virtual don't fuck with me zone. And you can do the same thing if you find yourself in an open office space, if you feel that it's distracting. Have a great day.